Hello everyone, and welcome to the Haunted Radio Show, the only YouTube channel guaranteed to promote paranormal activity in your immediate area. Good luck proving me wrong. I'm your host Luke Marone, and today we will be looking at the history of the Wendigo, a mythical creature found in Native American folklore. This is my first official episode of this show, so feel free to give me feedback and let me know what I should improve going forth. While I've got you here, why don't you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. I will have new videos up every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. With that out of the way, let's get to some spooky stuff. Wendigos are part of Algonquin folklore. I was surprised to learn that Algonquin does not relate to any one tribe, but rather it refers to the language spoken amongst many different tribes and indigenous peoples. It's kind of like how there's a whole bunch of different English people. At least that's my understanding of it. Feel free to correct me in the comments below. What's interesting about that is that it means there are various interpretations of the Wendigo from various different belief structures. For example, for the Chippewa, Saulteaux, and Cree peoples, the Wendigo is characterized as gaunt and emaciated. Whereas for the Naskapi and Innu peoples, the Wendigo is often described as giant, growing in proportion to what it consumes. Despite these inconsistencies, there were several common traits. The Wendigo is a supernatural and malevolent beast with a cannibalistic hunger that cannot be satisfied. To this end, the Wendigo represents greed and gluttony. No matter what it consumes, it will never be enough, and it continues to hunger for human flesh. In his book, The Manitus, The Spiritual World of the Ojibwa, author Basil Johnston describes the Wendigo as such. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones. With its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets, the Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody. Unclean and suffering from suppurations of the flesh, the Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. In Algonquin folklore, the Wendigo became synonymous with greed and gluttony, and at the same time, starvation and death, painting a picture very similar to the modern zombie, as introduced by George Romero in 1968's Night of the Living Dead. That is, an image of a ghastly predator with an insatiable appetite for human flesh. In fact, I would dare to venture a guess that perhaps George Romero was partially inspired by this legend, but at the end of the day, that is pure speculation, and there's no evidence to support this theory beyond the similarities between the creatures. That being said, I look forward to some Hollywood studio running with this idea and crafting a film that embraces what I believe to be an obvious and overlooked link between the Wendigo and the living dead. No need to send me any money, just let me see it on the big screen. The link between Wendigos and the living dead is further enhanced by the incorporation of the human Wendigo into the myth. While a Wendigo is viewed as a unique creature, separate from humans, it could infect people who remained around it for too long, essentially turning people into Wendigos, much like how a zombie bite will often cause a human to join the ranks of the undead. As many myths exist to teach a lesson in whatever culture crafts them, one can see how the infectious nature of a Wendigo could act as a warning of the dangers of greed, and would thus encourage cooperation and moderation amongst indigenous people. There are various accounts, primarily from before the 20th century, of Wendigo psychosis, something far more grounded in reality than the more mythical interpretation of the Wendigo. This is the kind of thing that really creeps me out, because while the actual motivations and causes of these events are up for discussion, the end result is often well documented and less open to dispute. In his article, The Wendigo in the Material World, published in the Ethnohistory Journal in 1988, Robert Brightman documents a haunting tale of Wendigo psychosis. During the winter of 1878, a Plains Cree trapper named Swift Runner, and his family faced starvation, and his eldest son ultimately died. While a Hudson's Bay Company post held food and supplies 25 miles away, which back in the day was basically your commute to work, Swift Runner butchered and consumed his family. What we have here is a case of a man resorting to cannibalism, not out of necessity, but apparently due to Wendigo psychosis. Possibly, if he cannibalized his son first, he would then cannibalize his whole family. Or maybe he just had cabin fever and he was kind of sick of his family's shit. I don't know, I wasn't around then, but it doesn't sound like he could just hop into his car, go for a drive, and clear his head. Now that we have talked about the Wendigo, both as it exists in myth and reality, we can move on to the concept of the Wendigo as a metaphor. The concept of the Wendigo can be applied to individual people for demonstrating violent and destructive tendencies that stand in sharp contrast to keeping peace within a community. In this sense, the Wendigo is a real-life monster, a rapist, a murderer, an agent of chaos. The metaphor can also be applied to groups of people wholesale. The process of colonialism that uprooted many a native tribe, for example. And it's hard to blame the indigenous folks for their name-calling, since historically the white man has been less than considerate of native people. This brings us to media depictions of the Wendigo in the modern age. I was introduced to the concept of the Wendigo when the character bearing that name appeared as a boss in 2003's X2 Wolverine's Revenge. This version of the mythical creature first appeared in 1973's The Incredible Hulk, issue 162, and despite its much beefier proportions, keeping in line with the general aesthetic of superhero comic books, featured an origin that was relatively faithful to the Algonquin legend. There are countless other interpretations of the legend in Western media, including a very unnerving and haunting appearance in NBC's Hannibal television series. Rest in peace, Hannibal, you were one of the greatest horror shows ever created. But ultimately, I think that there's a lot of potential in the idea that has not yet been exploited. See my idea for a Wendigo zombie movie. That brings us to the close of the very first official episode of the Haunted Radio Show. Let me know what you thought, and be honest, so that I can make sure this channel improves as I make more episodes. Let me know what you think of the Wendigo and where you have seen it in various horror movies and shows. Thank you for watching, and I will have another video up on Wednesday. Take care, everybody. This is Luke Marone, signing off of the Haunted Radio Show. Peace out.